We do know that probably somewhere in the mid 20% of Albertans do support more independence from Canada.
A vote on separation is coming. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, Alberta getting the go-ahead whether they should have a referendum to separate. We've got a new bombshell story here of billions of dollars going to First Nations. We got polling updates, a bunch of other stuff. Let's jump into this. Starting this off, we got polling updates here from the recent polls that came out. So Sharia Teest modeling these out. The latest Nanos poll here that was neck and neck. The Liberals that were just slightly ahead. We're seeing here a conservative minority government. From this other one here, the liaison strategies one that was tied, I believe it was 38 to 38. Yeah, this one shows a Liberal minority government, 160 seats. They're not going to be able to steal a majority with that. We have liaison strategies with a new Toronto mayor poll showing Olivia Chow at 39% and John Tory at 35%. I don't know what's going on in Toronto. The residents there must see how bad things are there. And they're still going to vote in Olivia Chow, who's not a serious mayor. Let's get real here. All you have to do is see her dancing around at that Caribbean festival or any other occasion where she likes to film her little social media videos. She's not serious. We got this one too from Palace Data. This is a new poll for BC. NDP at 43.6%, Conservatives at 38.9%. You also seen one BC on this one as well, 7%. These polls I don't think take into account of the entire implosion of the one BC party, so it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. I don't know if Dallas Brody is allowed to have a party of just one. I think you have to have 2 members of parliament to have a party. We have Ottawa offers $35.5 billion for First Nations child welfare reform. Proposal offers $4.4 billion in ongoing annual funding after initial $35.5 billion ends in 2033-34. This must end.
After nearly 2 decades of litigation and one previously rejected plan,
today is a historic day.
A new approach to reforming the First Nations child welfare system.
Every day that we continue to, try to define what an agreement looks like or trying to determine through legal measures how you're going to stop discrimination is another day that a child is in care.
All Canadians need to be treated equal. For example, Exhibit A, homelessness here in Canada, shelters, transitional, unsheltered, gender and age respondents. So you see the majority of people who are homeless here are from 15 to 65. Duration of homelessness over the past 12 months. We've got 50% is 12 months, 0 to 2 months, 3 to 5 months, and 6 to 11 months. Age of first homelessness by current age group. 5 to 9 years old is where this starts. It goes up 10 to 14, 15 to 19 years old. Indigenous people, respondents were asked if they identify as First Nations. 66% non-Indigenous, 3% Indigenous ancestry, which is a small sliver here, and Indigenous 31%. So this is not an issue that just affects First Nations. This affects all Canadians. You can see 66% are not First Nations. So maybe it's time that all Canadians, including First Nations, all get treated equally and there's not special handouts. No one's denying what happened hundreds of years ago with First Nations. Canadians today shouldn't be paying out money over and over and over for stuff that happened in the 1800s. No one's alive from back then. And on top of that, as I'm going to show you, there's corrupt chiefs who pocket this money, and then First Nation members on reserve do not get the essentials in life that they need. And if they speak up against it, then they'll get nothing from the chief, which is why you don't hear many people speaking up about it unless they've moved off the reserve and they're not reliant on it at all. It's a corrupt system. It's like you have a little mini king, a part of all these bands. And if you speak against the king, it's off with your head. Not literally, but I mean, they punish them financially.
The Indigenous Services Minister is proposing regional deals, so First Nations would decide how to spend more than $35 billion over the next decade.
I believe that the community needs to drive the decision-making.
The government is obligated to fix on-reserve child and family services after a decade-old Canadian Human Rights Tribunal ruling found chronic underfunding and called it discriminatory.
Canada systemically discriminated against every First Nations child across the country. So we need systemic solutions.
But Ottawa's plan is being scrutinized against another, put forward by First Nations chiefs and children's advocates.
What it does is it focuses on how do we make sure every dollar benefits children, youth, and families to the maximum extent? And how do we hold Canada accountable?
So Sharia Teest initially showing this one from that report there. As he pointed out, unsheltered or homeless is this blue line here. 33% of children 0 to 12 years old, their first experience being homeless is in this age bracket. 0 to 12 years old. This is Canada. So once again, going back to this is bankrupting Canada. And all of this money will not go to help children. Some of it will on the bands that are run properly, but there's many that are not. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government is presenting a new plan worth more than $35.5 billion to keep First Nation children connected to their their communities, culture, and families. The offer is less than the $47.8 billion presented by former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government over 10 years, but it covers a shorter period of time and contains a key difference. $4.4 billion annual commitments starting 2033-34 after the initial $35 billion. At this point, we're discriminating against Canadian children who are not Indigenous, who there's not enough money for them. When money gets sent over to corrupt chiefs and they don't audit these bank accounts, well, then that money should have gone to help Canadian children who don't get any of these handouts.
We have secured a commitment from the Government of Canada to provide $47.8 billion.
Last year, the previous Liberal government's offer was voted down by chiefs.
They were looking for that long-term commitment. This is something that we've secured.
The government's new proposal guarantees more than $4 billion annually after the initial funding runs out in 2034. It's now up to the Human Rights Tribunal to decide which plan to approve based on which approach is the most likely to give First Nations children a better future.
It's amazing they rejected that. Over concerns the money only earmarked for 10 years would be subject to annual reviews. That's right, you wouldn't want to review how they're spending the money. The government is pitching a national reform plan, but looking to strike regional agreements with First Nation entities so they can tailor the delivery of funding of services to their distinct realities. This is unbelievable. We're living in a two-tier country here. No one in Canada today is responsible for the sins of great-great-great-grandfathers of the past. There's a lot of red flags right now. We saw that report from Blacklock's report just a few days ago, how the federal government has locked and sealed away the whole issue of digging up the graves in Kamloops and seeing what the truth is. Interesting. They gave them $12 million to dig the ground and see if there's any bodies there. And instead, what did? They pocketed the money. Now the government sealed the records. There's no digging. Maybe that's because there's nothing there. There's no bones there. There's no kids there. There's no nothing there. When it comes down to it, just dig it up and see what the results are. That's why they don't do it, because they know that there's likely nothing there. And then they can't fearmonger this and get more money from the government. And when I mean by the government, I mean Canadian taxpayers. So this account here has been doing some good digging. About 2 months ago, I started digging into First Nation finances and found that some of them did not report their financials at all. Some of them looked highly corrupt or suspicious what they're doing. And even some of them who do report their financials, they have ways of sneaking money through the system into their own pockets through contracts and all that kind of stuff. But this guy's gone through. He's organized all the ones who have and haven't and has broken this down. So he says there are 780 Indian bands in Canada. There's public financial statements for 577 of them, 74%, as in 26% of them aren't even disclosing their financials, which is outrageous. Have tabulated the cash and accumulated surplus, more or less net equity from each statement. Totals for 577 bands are cash, $10.6 billion in cash they have, net equity, $43.8 billion. And he's got top 10 bands by cash. Wekim Kong unceded territory, $755 million. This thing of having that much cash, and you're like, you know what? Give me more money from taxpayers. Keep it coming. Blood Tribe sounds like a friendly group. 200 million, 200 million, 200, 200, 160, 150 million dollars. Top 10 bands by accumulated surplus. Samsung Cree Nation, $868 million. It's time that all Canadians start paying their fair share of taxes, including First Nations. So this guy also posting this one, holy crap, Squamish Nation has 228 million in cash, 499 million in accumulated surplus net equity. Wow, between the start of fiscal 2024 and end of fiscal 2025, Squamish Nation made a profit of $120 million. It goes on to look at Teskim First Nation. They have approximately 200 hectares or 500 acres of the most expensive land in Canada. Pender Island, Satura Island, yeah, this is all on the west coast, Cowichan. Yeah, this is the most expensive land in Canada. Despite having hundreds of millions of dollars in land, keep giving out taxpayer money to them. They're so broke, they need it. It's funny, he goes on to say this band here is the poorest band that he's viewed so far, $256,000 in cash. Accumulated assets, $6.3 million. You sell off one little piece of that land and you'll have millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in the bank account. Strangely enough, they have a lot of revenue for 87 people, $5.6 million in 2022. This is what I pointed out when I was digging into this stuff over and over. A lot of these bands have 30, 40, 50, 200, 155 people, and they get millions and millions of dollars every year. Some of these bands, as I pointed out, don't even have anyone who live on them. That's how ridiculous this system is. I've had numerous First Nations message me and say the chiefs are corrupt, you can't speak against them or they'll make your life a living hell. They can essentially be like little dictators. They have so much power. What we need is to break apart this entire system and have everyone be equal. That way these chiefs won't have this dictatorship-like power over a small group of people who can't speak up against them, or it directly affects their own finances. I recently came across this map here, which is bctreaty.ca/map. This is an interactive map where you can, it's only for British Columbia, which is where most of the problems are, but you can look across the entire province and say if you're somewhere down in Vancouver, mousing over it, you can see the historical land areas, and essentially you can see which band would be trying to steal your land if they do put a claim in. And this works all across British Columbia. And what you can do is click on this and it'll tell you right on here. It says here, stage 5 active negotiations. Or if we go back to another one here, say this one, same thing, Squamish Nation not currently negotiating. So it tells you which bands are trying to like steal taxpayers' money and which ones are not currently negotiating. This one here in Nanaimo is a tripartite reconciliation active negotiations. This stuff is going to bankrupt Canada. A lot of these chiefs, they just see a way to make hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't care. My great-great-grandfather picked blackberries off a bush here once. That means I get all of the land. Give me a break. Times change. Very quick to want to steal all the technology that Western life has brought to this region here. In other news, we've got Alberta's separation referendum vote going forward here. December 21st, 2025, Elections Canada has officially accepted the citizen initiative, so they will be voting on this, I believe, in October.
Okay, so Elections Alberta has approved this petition aimed at putting a referendum question forward to Albertans about this idea of separating from Canada. Just how significant is it that this has been approved under the new rules that are in place, and the fact that the question is being put out there? How significant is that?
Well, it is significant in that it guarantees that there will be a very hot debate about this over the next little while. We don't know what the government will decide to do with this. We don't know whether the signatures will be acquired. We do know that probably somewhere in the mid 20% of Albertans do support more independence from Canada. Whether that means outright separation or not is a separate question.
I think it's higher than 20%. We'll see.
But we've also got this other petition that Thomas Lukaszuk, a former deputy premier, has put forward, and that says, do you agree that Alberta should remain within Canada? So it's going to be up to the government whether both of these are put to a vote by Albertans. We've got 22 recall campaigns, and another three, I think, were applied for just yesterday. And so now we have the potential of a number of recall campaigns, these referenda, another referendum question potentially on immigration or on mining. If another one is approved, all of these are going to be swirling through Alberta politics over the next little while. And it might actually lead into an election as well.
Now, Laurie, you mentioned that there is potentially support for Alberta separating within the province itself, that it is something that is being debated and there is a lot of discussion surrounding that. So in the event that 178,000 signatures are collected to put this to a referendum, where do things go from there?
Well, that's up to the provincial government. As I said, they can decide to have a referendum vote where a number of questions are heard, including the ones saying that we should remain within Canada. All of that's up in the air. The one to remain in Canada could just go to the legislature for a vote. In this climate, I'm not sure that the government is going to do that. I suspect that they'll want to have perhaps both of these questions going forward at the same time, in spite of the fact they earlier had legislation saying that two referenda on the same question couldn't happen.
The double question thing is pretty confusing. Basically, Thomas was trying to switch the question to change the narrative, essentially. Saying, do you want Alberta to stay a part of Canada, is a nicer framing against separation versus, do you think Alberta should separate from Canada, is more separatist driven. It's kind of confusing to have two essentially of the same question, but framed differently, running at the same time. But that's where we are today.
And there will be a lot of debating happening in Alberta, and I think a lot of uncertainty. It could affect investment. Many business leaders are very concerned about this. Many Albertans are very concerned about this because it does represent a minority of Albertans in poll after poll, but it represents a significant proportion of members of the United Conservative Party, as we saw in their recent AGM. This was something they wanted to put on the agenda unsuccessfully and were quite angry about.
Now, Laurie, in the past few weeks, we have seen the Prime Minister and Alberta's Premier come out and have a very strong relationship together, speak very positively about one another.
Those are all just optics. What's really going on here is Canada's getting hammered on all fronts, whether it's from Donald Trump and America and tariffs or from awful liberal policies from the past 10 years. But now you've got the idea of separation in Alberta, which doesn't help secure new business. Same thing in Quebec, and that's surging over there too. You've now got it surging in Saskatchewan. You've got First Nations stealing land or trying to steal land in BC, which also hurts business as well. Steel and aluminum, auto industries getting hammered, Ontario and Quebec. What part of Canada isn't getting hammered right now?
And the priorities of Ottawa and Alberta. And that, of course, was surrounding that MOU and that energy deal that was signed as well. Has that had any impact on the sentiments within the province and whether or not it should remain a part of Canada?
I think there's no question it has had a positive effect, particularly in the business community. I mean, you contrast the Chamber of Commerce meeting that the Premier and the Prime Minister were in just the day before the UCP annual general meeting. Mark Carney got standing ovations, plural, in that meeting. So I think economically, there are a lot of people that are pleased with this deal. Certainly, they're looking for additional measures and perhaps investments in Alberta incentivized by the federal government. But they and many just ordinary Albertans are very much in favor of Alberta remaining in Canada, but they do see that Alberta has had what they see as an unfair treatment historically, and they'd like to see something better on that count. The folks that booed Danielle Smith at the annual general meeting didn't like the memorandum of agreement of understanding, and so there is a division amongst Albertans. And
that's because they see it as Danielle Smith trying to do a deal with the devil. Really, she was just trying to get rid of the electricity regulations among some of the other stuff. That basically helps Alberta right away. I think she knows full well there's no pipeline coming because Mark Carney's a grifter, but of course she can't come out and say that. But she did get some concessions, which helps Alberta in the short term.
Here, as I think we've seen in other places, there's a great danger that there will be deep divisions and polarization that happen within Alberta as this is debated.
This will continue to apply more pressure as Canada keeps fracturing here, whether it's Saskatchewan, Alberta, or the big surge coming back in Quebec right now, which is real. This makes Mark Carney look like he's not a unifier. He's not the guy who can bring Canada together, not a guy people thinks can lead the country. And we're seeing this in the polls. Who cares? I mean, that's his own words. Who cares? This really just comes back to floor crossers now. Mark Carney knows that people are starting to realize who the guy is. The polling numbers reflect that. Question is now, will he be able to bribe 2 more people to come over to the Liberal Party so it doesn't matter what his polling numbers are?